Hey folks, happy Friday. Welcome to my review of Grownish. For those not in the know, Grownish is a new series that is on the Freeform channel, formerly known as ABC Family Channel. Grownish is basically a spin-off of the super popular sitcom series Blackish. Um, the show follows their eldest daughter, Zoe Johnson, who attends university in California. And it's basically, I guess you could say, a continuing coming of age story. I first found out about the project about a year and a half ago when they announced it. They were thinking about it. And so I was interested, and of course, when the show was announced, the inevitable comparisons to of Grownish were compared to another popular spinoff show, A Different World, which was a spinoff of The Cosby Show, which followed the second eldest daughter, Denise Huxtable, as she attended Hillman College. Now, I I would love to tell people right now that comparing Grownish to A Different World, which I've been seeing a lot on social media, while I understand it because there's some similar DNA, they're both spin-offs of popular black sitcoms. Um, I don't think the comparisons are an insult to each other, but in some ways, some people have used the comparison of Grownish to A Different World in a way to dismiss Grownish. Some people were saying that since the show was not going to be based on a historically black college, like, A Different World, that it probably would have been a little watered down, that it wouldn't be as black or political. And I'm here to tell you folks that that is not the case. The show is created, of course, by Kenya Barris and Larry Wilmore, who are also the executive producers of Blackish. Now, I'm going to admit, I'm 46. I wasn't really sure what I was going to expect from this show. I was just like, yeah, I'm twice the age of half the cast of most of the cast of this show. I don't know if it's going to be able to relate to me. And, that's okay. Not every show has to relate to me. That's fine. But I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised, I should say, at how smart and funny and touching and how relevant this show is. The first episode is basically a setup. I kind of call it, it definitely has a lot of homages to The Breakfast Club. If you saw one of the promos for Grownish last month, they did like a cute little send up to The Breakfast Club. Which I think is relevant. I think that's cool. Because John Hughes was definitely the king of the teenage movies in the 80s. But finally to have a show that's centering a woman of color, Yara Shahidi, who plays Zoe Johnson, is mixed race. She's half black and half Iranian, I believe. And so, yes, by centering a show, about the college experience around a woman of color is a rarity in itself. And what I love about Grownish, number one, the show is wonderfully diverse. You've got, white Jewish bisexual character, Nomi. You have a first generation South Asian college student, Vivek. You have the twins who are played by Chloe and Halle, who are, famous pop stars. They're signed by Beyonce. They play twin track stars who attend the university. And then you have Luca, who's sort of like the Black Lives Matter, Black Power sort of activist. And then you have, sorry, that's Aaron. Sorry, Aaron. And then you have Luca, who they call Baby Basquiat, who I think that is the cutest thing ever because he does kind of look like Basquiat. So she's, Zoe is sort of surrounded by these very different characters, and then, she also has her roommate, Anna, who is a conservative Catholic Latina American college student who shares a room with her. And so I love the diversity of the show. And I feel that, of course, that is what every college experience is supposed to be about. You're supposed to find people who are different than you, whether you agree or disagree with them, because that's how you grow as a person. And so the first episode was basically a setup. And the second episode, I liked because they actually dealt with, drug use, right? Or using opiates, a lot of the students using, these popping pills to basically get through the semester. Zoe gets caught up in that. She's, has like 3 different projects that she has to do, and she feels that she has to take these pills. And what I like about the second episode is that there's no easy resolution as to, Zoe deciding to continue usage of these pills or not. And I think that's very realistic. But what I did want to talk about is, particularly, I feel like the show really comes into its own in the third and the fourth episode, right? The third episode, we've already, from Blackish, when Zoe visited the university, when she visited the campus, we know that she has a crush on Aaron, who's, the socially conscious black activist. And so the third episode and the fourth episode talk about sex or sexuality in very different ways, but in ways that I find are very refreshing, that we don't usually see on television or that we see on the small screen. So the third episode, we know Zoe and Aaron like each other. And so basically there's been this habit that Aaron has established where he's hitting Zoe up, texting her, asking you up, right? Which we all know is sort of like code for a potential hookup or sex or whatever. And what I loved about the third episode was Zoe kind of struggling or trying to come to a decision as to, should she answer the text back? I guess he texts her like around 12 midnight or whatever, and she's in the room with her friends, or she calls her girlfriends in, and she's like, hey, he's hitting me up, he's asking me you up. Should I answer back? Does it make me look like a hoe? Does it make me look too fast or whatever? And the scene is so brilliantly written because there's so many different points of views that are expressed, not only by Zoe's girlfriends, right? Like Nomi, she's like this very sex positive, queer woman, and she, decides, hey, yeah, you should answer it back. She was like, you're an adult, if you want to have sex and that has no emotional attachment, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Of course, her other friends, the twins and Anna, have different opinions. And then what's interesting is seeing the point of view from Aaron and Vivek, who are also talking about the texting and the potential hookups, right? And what was I found really funny about that scene was the differences in definitions of what hookup means depending on the gender and depending on what people's sexual experience or sexual history is, right? Some people, when they say hookup, it means sex, right? They straight up have sex. Some people, when they say hookup, it means, we're hanging Netflix and chill. We may, kiss, we may touch on each other, but doesn't necessarily mean that there's any penetration involved or any sex involved. And so it was really hilarious to see how everybody had different opinions, right? Like there was one character who said, well, to me, it just means, shirt off, bra on, we're kissing, but there's no sex, right? Yeah, and other people were like, no, it just means sex. And so it was really refreshing to see the differences among gender lines, right? And sexual preferences too, of what that means. And so as the episode goes on, Zoe decides she's going to date 2 guys, right? She decides to continue dating Aaron, and then she also starts hanging out and hooking up with Lucas, right? With the Luca character. And so what I actually like is that there's this rivalry between Luca and Aaron, because they're 2 very different people, right? Aaron is very much down for the cause, Black Lives Matter, Black Power Fist, and Luca is very much laid back, with the locks, and he's very much like an artistic free spirit. And Luca kind of feels that Aaron is kind of full of himself and maybe over performative, I'm guessing. And Aaron is not a fan of Luca because he feels that Luca is a flake and probably isn't really black, right? Which is always a discussion that we're having in this, in our communities online. What constitutes blackness, right? And is it, do you get to a point where it's performative blackness, where you have to like certain things and co-sign on certain things to prove that you're really black? So I hope that they continue with this, tension between and this dialogue between Aaron and Luca, because it's funny, but it's an important discussion to have. So anyway, she decides to date both of them, and then of course things go sideways. Both of the guys find out about each other, and they both dump her. So that's the end of the third episode, and so Zoe basically learns her lesson. But what I did like about the episode is that it wasn't about sex shaming Zoe. It was just the fact that she was just messy. It's probably not a good idea to FaceTime one guy while you have another guy on Skype. Not a good idea. That's how she got busted. Basically, social media was her downfall. So there's that. And so we continue into the fourth episode, that's titled Starboy. And this episode is really good because they are tackling two really big subjects, and balancing both of them in a really smart and a mature way. We find out that Zoe, at the beginning of the episode, she is applying for an internship at Teen Vogue, and in order to get a recommendation from her dean tells her that she has to coach this new basketball star, Cash Mooney, right? He's like, the golden child. He's supposed to bring the school to the championships, but his grades are not the best, right? And so this show really, and I didn't even see this coming, this show is really tackling the whole subject of student athletes, right? About how, the university system makes tons and tons of money, obscene amounts of money off of college, basketball. But yet these students, aside from the scholarships that they get, a lot of them are broke. They can't afford food. They can't afford clothes, and so there's been this debate. Should college athletes get paid? I have my own opinions on that subject, but I do think that it's a valid debate to have, because when you find out that, college coaches, basketball coaches are making upwards of like $2 million. And then the school itself, the rights to, broadcasters, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. And then these students are, making next to money. Like, yes, they're getting a free ride, they're getting a scholarship, but let's look at the stats. Less than 1 to 2% of college students, of college athletes, actually make it into professional sports, right? In the case of college basketball, less than 1% of them actually make it into the NBA, right? So yeah, there's a debate on one hand. Well, yeah, at least they graduate and they have a college degree. And then of course there's the other debate of, well, suppose they get injured. If you're on a athletic scholarship and you get injured and you can no longer play and perform for these schools, your scholarship is snatched, right? And then what happens to you? A lot of these students have to leave school, so there's really no backup plan for them. And so, I feel that Grownish really handled this episode in a really smart way, because it's a lot of people are saying that it's sort of like modern day. It's like being on a modern day plantation, that they don't really care about these students, right? We have stories coming out of, students, being on athletic scholarships, and some of them graduate no smarter than when they come in, right? I mean, some of them, there's scams where they're sending other students to take these, the athletes test, just making sure that they keep the B or C average that they need in order to continue playing. And some of them are barely above reading average, reading comprehension, college, or I should say high school reading, right? And so, yeah, there's that. So I don't want to say any more, but definitely watch that, and then see how that plays out. And then the other thing that was discussed in episode 4, which really caught my eye, centered on the Nomi character. So we know that Nomi is Jewish American. She's sort of like a rebel in her family, and she's also bisexual, right? So we see the Nomi character at a sports bar. She's on a date with another woman who's a lesbian, and there's a young man to the left of them that offers to buy them drinks. And so Nomi's date is super irritated, and she just shuts him down, and she was like, "We don't want any drinks from you. Beat it." So, he was just like, "I was just trying to be nice. I really wasn't trying to pick you guys up or be disrespectful." And then Nomi kind of is like, "Yeah, well, why were you so short with him?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm just not here to kind of fulfill, these guys' lesbian fantasies or whatever, because, he was just trying to get us for a threesome." And then Nomi kind of says, "Well, yeah, I mean, I agree about the objectification of lesbians and queer women for the male gaze, but she was like, but what's wrong with the threesome?" Right? And her date becomes super offended, really upset, and just walks off, right? And then Nomi yells off at her. She was like, "Yeah, LGBTQ, right? The B stands for something in that." And so, we've had certain shows that have, had bisexual characters or tried to touch on, biphobia and just done it in a really clumsy way, just not good. But I love that Grownish actually tackled biphobia and the inherent bias. And I'm gonna say this: there is an inherent bias within the LGBTQIA community against bisexuals, right? And if you take any letter within there, there's all sorts of transphobia, phobia against lesbians, phobia against bisexual men. It's across the gamut. But focusing specifically on the biphobia and the bias against bisexual people, that is a conversation that is worth having. I think so. Because, there is this idea or this thought, and I mentioned this in one of my recaps of She's Gotta Have It, that bisexual women, I'm going to start with bisexual women, that bisexual women are bi because it is performative or pandering to the male gaze. So basically, the reason why women go both ways is because they're trying to, titillate men or trying to get men, trying to, get favor from them and, try to broker a three-way. And you know what I mean? The thing is, a lot of it is just wrong, right? Let's be clear. You can be a bisexual woman that is attracted to both genders and is not down with threesomes, right? There are plenty of bisexual women that will tell you that they like dating. The gender doesn't matter, but they're not really into, plural sex. They're not really, it's one partner at a time, and that it is, and men do this, cisgender straight men do this, and they do need to own up to this. Sometimes when women disclose that they're bisexual or queer, the first thought that pops into their head is, oh, can I get a threesome? Which is just wrong and disrespectful. So y'all need to back that up, right? So yeah, there's that. But on the other side, there are bisexual women who are not trying to pander to the male gaze, who legitimately enjoy sex with both genders. And I'm going to include trans people and gender non-binary people too, right? Where you can, bisexual women can enjoy sex with a spectrum of genders, but it doesn't necessarily make them wrong for wanting to have a threesome. Just because you're a bisexual woman and you want to have a threesome does not mean that you are just pandering or a faux sexual or bi-curious. No, it just genuinely means that you just like having both at the same time, right? Let's put it this way. I go to the movies, right? I love hot buttered popcorn and I love Raisinets, right? Now, depending on my mood or what my taste is, sometimes I'll go to the movies, I'll have buttered popcorn, right? Sometimes I'll go, I'm just in the mood for Raisinets. And then there are times where I'm just in the mood of throwing the both of them together and just getting a big gooey mess and enjoying both of them at the same time, right? That's the best allegory that I can come up with as far as, bisexuals and their preferences of whether they want to have threesomes or not. So I'm really glad that Grownish addressed that, right? Clearly, Nomi has no problem. She is very secure in her queerness, in her sexual preferences, and by having a threesome with both a man and a woman doesn't mean that she is somehow a sellout and that she is somehow just trying to favor Curry with men, right? And then Grownish does something really, really, really smart, right? Because it seems that Nomi ends up hooking up with that guy that originally offered them the drink, right? And then we see them the next night back at the bar when they're watching Cash Mooney play another game. And then the same lesbian woman who Nomi was on a date with kind of walks by and, flips her the bird, gives her the middle finger. And Nomi gets really upset. And she was like, oh, okay, so it's like that. This is how we're doing it. And then, the guy she's on a date with um, he discloses that he's bisexual, right? And then it's the look on Nomi's face. She says nothing, but it's just kind of like this look like, wait, what? And everybody is just kind of like sipping and just eating, like acting like they didn't hear that because it's a huge shock, right? And I love that twist because it totally subverts our expectations, right? Because the focus starts out with, the queerness or the bisexuality of a woman, right? And then they flip it out. It's like, yeah, men are bisexual too, right? And then that's another conversation that we can have within our communities, right? Is how even bisexual women and queer women can tend to have a negative bias against bisexual men, right? And I'm telling you, I saw this because I believe a few years ago, this was either like the first or second season of How to Get Away with Murder. The Michaela character, we knew that she was engaged, and her fiance, who clearly was in love with her, the opening scene of the episode was him just basically blowing out her back, right? Clearly they had a very, healthy sex life. And it comes out during the episode that he had sex while he was in college. He had sex with another man, right? And then it was this weird thing where Michaela, he clearly told her it wasn't while they were involved. He never cheated on her. This was before I met you. But I just hated that episode. I hated that episode because all of a sudden, Michaela was just like, oh my God, I don't know who you are. I'm not sure where this relationship is going to. And I was just sitting there thinking, if this was another woman that he disclosed that he had slept with, you would not make a big deal out of this, right? But all of a sudden, because he disclosed that he had slept with another man, it was almost as if he was damaged goods, right? Number one, they just did a bad job addressing the fact that it could possibly be that this character, that Michaela's fiance, was possibly queer or bisexual. No, they just made it like, well, I'm a dude, was up with another dude, but I'm straight. It didn't mean anything. It just kind of went downhill from there. And I think what was even more alarming to me, because I was live tweeting that night, was seeing other straight women and queer women who were commenting on this episode and saying, yeah, these guys can't be trusted. Oh yeah, if I found out that if I was with a guy and I found out that he had slept with another dude, I wouldn't want to be with him. He's just, then the whole closeting subject came up, right? And just even as recently as last year, we saw this topic revisited in Insecure, where the Molly character was dating this really nice guy. He disclosed to her, and clearly, again, healthy sex life. Molly definitely wasn't lacking for orgasms. And then he disclosed that, one night he and his boy got twisted or whatever, and they had sex with each other. And then after that, Molly was just like, wumpity womp womp womp, I don't want you anymore. Well, Molly already has issues anyway. But it was just sort of like, he's damaged goods. Although I will give points to Insecure for the fact that there was a discussion after that, right? Where Molly was with her girlfriends. It was Issa and her other girlfriends, where surprisingly, Issa was like, well, I mean, if he slept with another guy, if he's bi, who cares? I mean, he treats you well. And some of her girlfriends were actually giving her pushback, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't make him less of a man because he slept with another man. And so I'm really glad that we're having these shows that are talking about the bias against bisexual men. And I am especially happy, speaking of Issa, she has a production deal with HBO, and Trevon, who is an Emmy Award winner. He wrote for, he was a writer, a staff writer on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and now he writes for the Samantha Bee Show. Trevon is openly bisexual, and he and Issa will actually be developing a series about a Black bisexual man living in LA who is dating different genders, right? So yeah, kudos to Grownish for really tackling, the bias against bisexual women and the fact that we can't be trusted, we can't make our minds up, and also taking it one step further and also interrogating bisexual women and queer women who in turn show bias against bisexual men and don't want to date bisexual men, right? Because the idea is that they're closeted. If they slept with another man, they're really gay. And it's just, I just find it hilarious that you have no problem as a bisexual woman asking for latitude in your sexual preferences, but yet when it comes to a bisexual man, and I've seen these arguments where they're like, men can't possibly be bisexual, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, I would tell you guys, definitely watch Blackish. If you don't have the Freeform channel, the episodes air on Hulu the next day. You can go to hulu.com and you can watch them there. Yeah, it's a really smart show. I need to watch episode 5, which aired last night. But yeah, don't listen to people that are like, oh, it's just a different world. You don't need to watch anything. No, I think, it's about evolution. A Different World was revolutionary for the time that it came out, and Blackish is for this generation, for the millennial generation. And so I don't think one is not better than the other, one is not worse than the other. I think me, straddling both, I appreciate both for what they are. And so, yeah, definitely, watch Grownish and let me know what you think. I'll talk to you later. Bye.